All right, welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Always fun to be back.
This time we're looking at Globus Spirits Ltd.
Yeah.
Their Q2 FY25 results,
Mm-hmm.
fresh off the press, November 12th.
Yeah.
So we've got quite a bit of source material here. We've got the press release,
Right.
the auditor's reports, both standalone and consolidated.
Yeah.
And we also have the presentation that was given for investors and analysts.
Yep.
So quite a bit to dig into.
Yeah.
We're going to distill it all down so you can understand how they performed this quarter,
Yeah.
where they're doing really well,
Sure.
maybe where they're struggling a bit.
Yep.
And, most importantly, what it all means for the future.
Right.
So maybe before we get into the numbers, can you give us just a quick overview
Yeah.
of Globus Spirits?
So Globus Spirits is an Indian company.
Okay.
And they're in the alcoholic beverage space,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not just making and selling your typical bottle of liquor. They're involved in a whole bunch of different areas. They do IML,
Okay.
IMFL. They even produce ethanol and bulk alcohol.
Wow. Okay, so they got their hands in a lot of different things.
Exactly. And they also do franchise bottling.
Interesting.
So it's a very multifaceted business model.
So not just one type of alcohol and not just one way of getting it to consumers.
That's right.
Okay, well, that's a lot to cover.
It is.
So let's dive right into these results.
Sure.
And their revenue is up 12.5% year on year.
Yeah.
It hit 6,379 million rupees.
Mm-hmm.
That even surpasses the previous quarter,
That's right.
which was 6,421 million rupees.
Correct.
So on the surface, that sounds really good.
It does, but
There's always a but.
there's always a but.
What's the catch?
So their EBITDA margin has actually shrunk from
Right.
7% in Q2 of last year to 5% this year.
So even though they're bringing in more money overall,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like each sale isn't as profitable.
That's right. So while they're bringing in more money overall, it's costing them more to make that money.
Interesting. Okay, so makes you wonder where that shift is coming from.
Right.
Is it affecting all of their products equally?
That's a great question.
Or some areas doing better than others?
Yeah, so that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
When we start to look at the different business segments,
Okay.
then we can start to get a clearer picture.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Oh.
Why don't we start with their consumer business?
Sure.
Particularly the prestige and above category.
Okay. Yeah.
So the fancy stuff.
The good stuff.
The reports show incredible 270% growth year on year in that segment,
Wow.
reaching
Yeah.
240 million rupees.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of growth that gets investors really excited.
Definitely.
It's like, a hidden gem suddenly becoming like the must-have item.
Right.
So what's driving that surge?
Well, there's a very specific reason for that surge.
Okay.
They launched a new product called Dushab India Craft Whiskey. It's their first single malt,
Wow.
and it's priced at 4,500 to 5,000 rupees.
Okay.
So clearly aiming for that premium market.
Okay, so they're making strategic moves up the ladder,
Exactly.
not just sticking with what they've always done.
That's right.
And it seems to be paying off, at least in terms of revenue.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that that's not their only venture into the premium market.
Oh, okay. So tell me more about that.
So they've also rolled out Terai India Craft Gin,
Okay.
which is infused with lychees and mulberries.
Oh, wow.
And then they have Seven Heaven,
Mm-hmm.
which is their ultra premium grain whiskey.
Okay, so they're building this diverse brand portfolio,
That's right.
not just relying on, one success story.
Exactly.
And all of this is happening
Mm-hmm.
while their regular and others segment is seeing solid, if less explosive growth at 12% year on year.
Yeah.
So they're not neglecting their core offerings
Oh.
while they're chasing these high-end dreams.
Yeah, and that segment actually hit 2,108 million rupees.
Okay.
Driven largely by their stronghold in the Rajasthan market,
Okay.
and also the launch of GR8 whiskey in Uttar Pradesh,
Okay.
which is a massive market.
How massive are we talking?
About 106 million cases annually.
Wow, that's a huge market.
It is.
Okay, so stability in one market,
Right.
growth in another.
Exactly.
What about their manufacturing segment?
Sure.
That's where all the actual production happens, right?
Yes, that's right.
So what are we seeing there?
So they're seeing growth there, too.
Okay.
Revenue reached 4,030 million rupees.
Okay.
And their EBITDA is up a whopping 76% year on year,
Wow.
landing at 33 million rupees.
Okay, so at a glance, things look pretty good.
Yeah, there is a but, though.
Always a but.
Always a but.
What's the concern this time?
So while there is this undeniable growth, The manufacturing segment is being squeezed by rising input costs,
Okay.
specifically the cost of damaged food grain and maize,
Okay.
which they use a lot in ethanol production.
Mm-hmm.
Those have gone up.
Okay, so even though they're selling more,
Yes,
the cost of making that product is eating into their profits.
precisely.
Okay.
So it's a reminder that growth isn't always straightforward.
Right.
There are these external factors to consider.
So are they just accepting these rising costs, or
No, actually doing something to counter that.
they are being proactive
Okay.
and looking at technological upgrades
Okay.
to make their production process more efficient?
Makes sense.
There's even talk of branching out into producing corn oil,
Interesting.
which would diversify their revenue
Okay.
and, allow them to make the most of their raw materials.
So they're not just reacting to problems.
Right.
They're trying to, turn them into new opportunities.
Exactly.
I like that approach.
Yeah, and, we've talked about all these new brands they're launching.
Yeah.
And it really shows a multi-layered strategy.
Okay.
So, we talked about the premium offerings, but they've also got GR8 times whiskey and vodka.
Hitting the shelves.
Yep.
Specifically targeting that huge Uttar Pradesh market.
Right, that 106 million case market.
Exactly.
And I noticed something interesting about the packaging.
What's that?
They're using aseptic brick packs for those.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right?
Now that's thinking outside the bottle.
I like that.
So what's the advantage there?
So for one thing, it catches the eye.
Okay.
It stands out on the shelf.
Right.
But it's also very practical.
Okay.
Aseptic packaging is great for portability and storage.
Okay.
So it's really well suited for that market.
So they're not just chasing different market segments.
Yeah.
They're finding innovative ways to reach them.
Exactly.
So we've got premium brands,
Yep.
mass market brands,
Oh.
even this nod to innovation and packaging.
Right.
It seems like they're covering all their bases.
That's right. And that's their strategy in a nutshell.
Okay, so tell me more about that.
So they're building a brand portfolio that caters to every taste and budget, from regular all the way up to luxury.
Mm-hmm.
They really understand that the Indian market is very diverse,
Right.
and there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
It's like they're building a drinks menu where there's something for everyone,
I like that.
no matter what you're in the mood for.
Right.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Sure.
We need to look at their financials in more detail
Okay.
to really understand if this ambitious strategy is paying off.
Yeah.
Because revenue growth is only part of the story.
Right.
What's the bottom line looking like?
So their profit after tax has actually taken a significant hit.
Okay.
It's down 88.1% year on year.
Wow. Okay, so that might raise some eyebrows.
Yeah.
But I know there are always other factors to consider.
There are.
So break it down for us.
Yeah.
What else should we be paying attention to?
So their cash flow from operations is still positive,
Okay, that's good.
which points to a healthy core business.
Mm-hmm.
And while their debt has increased,
Okay, and
Right.
why would that be?
well, that's probably due to these new projects and brand launches.
Makes sense.
But it's still manageable overall.
So they're investing heavily in growth,
Right.
but not in a way that's putting them in a precarious financial position.
That's right.
Okay.
And, connecting this to their overall strategy,
Yeah.
it seems clear that pushing into this prestige and above
Yeah.
market
Mm-hmm.
is requiring a lot of upfront investment,
Okay.
which is impacting their profitability in the short term.
Okay.
But they're betting on that long-term payoff.
And are they just crossing their fingers hoping for the best, or
No.
do they have some data to back that up?
Yeah, they've stated that they expect profitability to rebound
Okay.
in the second half of FY25
Okay.
as input costs stabilize with the new Kharif crop.
Okay, and just so everyone's on the same page,
Yeah,
that's the harvest post-monsoon season.
that's right.
So they're factoring in seasonal variations
Yes,
and anticipating future trends.
that's right.
Okay, so it's not just blind optimism.
No.
It's a calculated outlook.
Exactly.
Before we move on,
Sure.
I wanted to mention one interesting detail from the reports.
Okay.
They mentioned that Terai Gin has already won awards
Oh, cool.
for its packaging and quality. So, they're not just putting out new products, they're putting out award-winning products.
That's awesome.
And then let's not forget about GR8 times
Okay.
with that innovative packaging.
Yeah.
Targeting that massive UP market.
Exactly.
I mean, it's those little details
Yeah.
that really bring the story to life, don't you think?
I totally agree.
Shows that they're not just, throwing things at the wall,
Yeah.
seeing what sticks.
Yeah,
There's real thought and strategy behind every move.
absolutely.
Speaking of strategy,
Okay.
there's one final point I wanted to touch on before we move on.
Sure.
It's this little legal footnotes.
Oh, right.
The reports mention some ongoing legal proceedings related to GST classification of animal feed supplements and income tax assessments.
Okay.
Oh, legal issues are never a good sign.
Not usually.
So what's the story there?
Okay, so it seems there's a dispute over how their animal feed supplements should be classified under the GST,
Okay.
whether they're agricultural products or processed goods.
Okay, so a classification issue.
Exactly.
And what about the income tax assessments?
So there are some income tax assessments where certain expenses were disallowed.
Okay. So are these issues something to be really worried about?
Well, it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Okay.
These matters could impact their financial performance
Yeah.
if things don't go their way.
So how are they approaching this?
Well, the management has expressed confidence in a favorable outcome.
Okay.
They've stated that they've filed appeals
Okay.
and are actively challenging the GST classification in court.
So we'll have to keep an eye on that as things develop.
We will.
But at least they're being transparent about these challenges.
That's it.
Not trying to sweep them under the rug.
Right. Transparency is key.
Especially when dealing with these kinds of potential risks.
Exactly. It allows investors and analysts to, make their own judgments rather than being caught off guard later on.
Makes sense. All right, so let's take a step back for a second.
Yeah.
Recap what we've learned so far about Globus Spirits.
Okay, so we're seeing a company in a period of dynamic growth, expanding into new markets and product segments.
Right.
Their launch of Do Job single malt whiskey, really a prime example of this strategy.
Yeah.
But this expansion is coming at a cost.
Right.
Putting pressure on their profitability in the short term.
Okay, so that's one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
They're also facing these rising input costs in their manufacturing segment.
Yes.
Which they're trying to mitigate through technology upgrades and, potentially this diversification into corn oil production.
Right.
But what I think is equally important is that they're not just focused on these high-end products. They're also bolstering their presence in the regular and others segment.
Yes.
With strategic launches like GR8 whiskey tailored to that massive UP market.
Absolutely.
And they're not afraid to innovate.
Nope.
As we see with these aseptic brick packs for GR8 times.
Right.
But it's not all smooth sailing.
That's right.
We've got those legal challenges related to GST and income tax looming on the horizon.
Yeah.
They're confident in a positive resolution, which is good.
Right.
But it's a reminder that even with all this strategic brilliance, these external factors can really come into play.
Absolutely. It's a classic case of risk versus reward.
Right.
Investors will be weighing that potential for growth against those potential legal headaches.
And that's where thorough research comes into play.
Exactly.
And that's where deep dives like this come in handy.
I hope so.
We're cutting through the jargon.
Yeah.
We're highlighting those crucial details that might otherwise get overlooked. At the end of the day, we're providing the insights.
Right.
But it's up to each listener to, make their own informed decision about Globus Spirits.
That's
We're empowering listeners.
That's what we aim for.
That's the goal. Yeah. And, it really is a fascinating story that's unfolding here.
Yeah.
One thing we haven't really touched on yet, though, is kind of the broader context of the Indian spirits market itself.
Okay.
It's becoming increasingly crowded with both domestic and international players.
Yeah.
All vying for, that top spot.
So it's not just about outperforming last year's numbers.
Right.
It's about outmaneuvering the competition.
It's about staying ahead of the game.
Okay.
And, it's not just a battle for market share either.
Okay.
Consumers are becoming more discerning.
Right.
Their tastes are evolving. They're looking for brands that resonate with their lifestyles.
So Globus Spirits can't just rest on their laurels?
Even with this diverse brand portfolio, they need to constantly be staying ahead of the trends.
Exactly. And that's where that multi-pronged approach we talked about earlier becomes even more crucial.
Okay.
By playing in these different price segments, they're kind of hedging their bets.
Okay.
If the premiumization trend slows down, they've got these other offerings to fall back on.
So it's like having a diversified investment portfolio, but for alcohol.
A good way to think about it.
You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And that's what this strategy does. It makes them more resilient to these market fluctuations.
That makes sense, but we can't just ignore those legal challenges that we discussed earlier. Uncertainty can have a ripple effect, potentially, spooking investors, impacting their access to capital.
It's a real concern.
So even if their core business is strong, those legal issues could still cast a shadow.
They could.
Over their future prospects.
It's a classic case of risk versus reward.
Right.
And investors will be weighing that potential for growth against the potential for legal headaches.
And that's where thorough research comes into play.
Exactly.
That's where deep dives like this come in handy.
I hope so.
We're cutting through the jargon.
Right.
We're highlighting, those crucial details that might otherwise get overlooked.
Exactly. We're providing those insights, but ultimately it's up to each individual listener to make their own informed decision about Globus Spirits.
Empowering listeners.
There you go.
That's what we aim for.
That's the goal.
Speaking of empowerment, I was really impressed by the level of detail provided in these source materials. The presentation, for example, it includes, profiles of the board of directors, the management team, highlighting their extensive experience.
Yeah, that kind of transparency is really commendable. It allows investors to assess the leadership's capabilities.
Right.
Which is so crucial when you're talking about a company undergoing rapid growth and expansion.
It's about the people behind the numbers, their vision for the future.
And speaking of their vision for the future,
the
source materials also mention some pretty exciting new projects.
Okay, like what?
That are in the pipeline.
Okay.
For instance, the Uttar Pradesh facility is expected to be fully operational in the second half of FY25.
Makes sense. We talked about UP being a massive market, but this facility isn't just for bottling, right?
No, it goes further than that.
Okay.
They're actually integrating backward into ENA production from both molasses and grain.
So this gives them greater control over their supply chain.
Exactly.
And could potentially lead to lower production costs. And higher profit margins down the line.
That's the idea.
So they're thinking long term.
Yeah.
Not just about these immediate gains.
That's right. They're laying the groundwork for sustained growth.
Okay.
And it's not just about size and scale either.
No.
They're also investing in innovation and sustainability.
Yeah, I noticed they mentioned upgrading their plants for maize production, incorporating malt spirit maturation, even exploring, the production of corn oil.
It's very forward-thinking.
It is. These are all initiatives that position them really well.
They do.
For the future. They're staying ahead of the curve, adopting best practices, and showing a commitment to sustainability, which is becoming increasingly important for investors these days.
It is. It's not just about profits anymore. It's about purpose.
And Globus Spirits seems to be embracing that shift in mindset.
They do.
Their efforts to reduce water consumption, minimize waste, explore renewable energy sources, all of that points in that direction.
It shows that they're not just focused on their own bottom line, but on the well-being of the planet as well.
It's a win-win.
It is, and it speaks to their long-term vision of building a sustainable and responsible business.
Okay.
But let's not forget about their core business.
Okay.
Those brands that are driving their revenue and capturing the hearts of consumers.
Okay, so let's dive back into that brand portfolio.
Sure.
We've talked about the diversity, the premium offerings, the innovative packaging. But I'm really curious to hear more about those individual brands.
Okay.
The specific stories they're crafting to resonate with these different consumers.
It's fascinating how they've really crafted unique personalities for each brand.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so take Tarai India Craft Gin, for example.
Okay.
The source material mentions that it's made with 11 select botanicals, sourced mainly from Kari Baoli, which is Asia's largest spice market in India.
Wow. Okay, so they're really tapping into that growing desire for authenticity, connecting their product to a sense of place and tradition.
Exactly. It's not just gin. It's an experience. It's a story in a bottle.
And then what about Brothers & Co.?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
The whiskey.
Right. So that's their blend of Scotch, American bourbon, and aged Indian single malt.
So kind of a global blend.
It is. It's a global blend.
Okay.
And, that one appeals to a different audience. Those who appreciate the art of blending. And are seeking a more complex flavor profile.
It's like a curated collection of spirits, each one telling its own unique story.
It really is.
And this attention to detail extends beyond just the premium segment.
Right.
Even their mass market offering, GR8 times, packaged in those aseptic brick packs, targeting a younger, more adventurous consumer who values convenience.
Exactly.
They're not just selling alcohol,
Nope.
They're selling lifestyle.
They are.
Aspirations.
It's a sophisticated approach to brand building.
It is. And they're not just relying on traditional marketing either.
Not at all.
They're actively engaging with consumers online, sharing, behind-the-scenes glimpses of their production process, building a community around their brands.
Social media is such a powerful platform.
It is.
For connecting with consumers on a more personal level.
It's about building relationships.
Absolutely.
Not just transactions.
And that brings us to another key takeaway from this deep dive.
What's that?
Globus Spirits is not just a company that makes and sells alcohol.
Right.
They're a company that's building brands, telling stories,
Yeah.
connecting with consumers on an emotional level.
They're tapping into those deeper desires and aspirations that drive consumer behavior.
And they're doing it in a way that's authentic, engaging, and sustainable.
But of course, none of this matters if the financials don't add up.
Right. We got to look at the numbers.
Okay, so let's shift our focus now to their financial performance.
Okay.
And really see what the numbers are telling us about their overall health and future prospects.
Okay, let's crunch some numbers.
All right, so we've already touched on some of the key highlights.
We have.
But let's dive a little deeper into those financial statements and see what story they're telling us.
So their profit and loss statement shows pretty steady growth in net revenues from operations over the past few quarters. In Q2 FY25, they reached 6,379 million rupees.
Oh, okay.
Which is a 12.5% year-on-year increase.
So that's a pretty healthy growth rate.
It is.
Especially considering, the current economic climate.
Right.
But we know that their EBITDA margin has taken a hit, mainly due to those rising input costs.
Yes, and that margin pressure is definitely something to watch closely.
Okay.
It suggests that they might be struggling to pass those increased costs on to consumers.
It's a tightrope walk.
It is.
Keeping prices competitive while protecting profit margins.
Exactly.
But their balance sheet does offer some positive signs.
It does.
Their net worth has been increasing steadily.
Right.
Reaching 9,818 million rupees in September 2024.
Yep. That indicates a strong financial foundation.
So they've got a solid base.
They do.
To build upon.
However.
Oh, there's always a however.
Always a however. Their long-term borrowings have also increased significantly, reaching 1,324 million rupees September 2024.
Okay. And why do you think that is?
Well, this is likely due to their investments in those new projects and capacity expansions that we discussed earlier.
So classic case of taking on debt to fuel growth.
Exactly. The key is to make sure that that debt is manageable.
Right.
And that the returns on those investments justify the borrowing costs.
And that's where their cash flow statement comes into play.
That's right.
It gives us a glimpse into their ability to generate cash from their operations.
Which is essential for servicing debt, investing in growth, and paying dividends.
So looking at their cash flow highlights, we see that they've consistently generated positive cash flow from operations. In both FY23 and FY24.
Yep, that's a reassuring sign.
It is. It tells us that their core business is healthy. And they're effectively converting those profits into cash.
Exactly.
Okay.
But they're also using significant amounts of that cash for investing activities.
Okay, so like what?
Primarily for capital expenditures. Relating to their expansion plans.
So they're plowing money back into the business.
Exactly.
Which is, what you want to see.
It is.
In a growth company.
Right. The challenge is to make sure that those investments generate sufficient returns to justify that cash outlay.
So a lot riding on those strategic decisions.
There is.
But overall, the picture seems fairly positive, wouldn't you say?
It's a mixed bag.
Right.
As with any company. In this kind of dynamic growth phase, they're making these strategic investments. They're expanding their operations. They're building a strong brand presence. But they are facing challenges.
Right.
From rising input costs to those legal hurdles.
It's a reminder that growth is rarely a smooth upward trajectory.
That's right.
There are always bumps along the way.
There are.
And it's how a company navigates those bumps that really determines their ultimate success.
And speaking of navigating bumps, we can't overlook the increasingly competitive landscape of the Indian spirits market.
Yep.
Globus Spirits is facing pressure, not just from domestic players, but also from these international brands.
Right. So it's a global game now.
It is. It's a global game.
It's a local one.
Exactly. So what are some of the key trends and challenges that Globus Spirits will need to navigate in this new playing field? Well, one trend we've already discussed extensively is the rise of premiumization.
Right.
And Globus Spirits is clearly capitalizing on that. But there's another trend emerging that I think could really shake things up.
What's that?
The growing popularity of craft spirits.
Oh, interesting.
Kind of like the craft beer boom.
Right.
But for hard liquor.
Yeah. Okay, so consumers, especially younger generations, are showing a growing interest in artisanal small batch spirits.
Right, with unique flavors and stories behind them.
So Globus Spirits might need to adapt their strategy to cater to this craft spirits movement.
Yeah, maybe they'll launch their own craft brand.
Okay.
Or partner with existing craft distilleries.
Interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they respond to this trend.
It will.
Another challenge they face is that complex regulatory landscape in India.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Each state has its own set of rules governing the production, distribution, and sale of alcohol.
It's a lot to keep track of.
Sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It can be. It definitely adds complexity to their operations.
Right.
And increases compliance costs.
But despite these challenges, it sounds like Globus Spirits is well-positioned to capitalize on the growth
I think so.
of the Indian spirits market, as long as they stay, you know, agile, innovative, responsive to consumer demands.
Exactly. It's a dynamic and evolving industry.
Right.
And only time will tell who emerges as the dominant players.
Okay.
But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
It's going to be a fascinating ride.
It is a reminder that in today's business world, you can't just stand still. You've got to constantly adapt, innovate, and anticipate the next big thing.
That's right. And speaking of anticipating the next big thing, we've reached a point where we need to kind of pause and reflect on what we've learned so far. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From, you know, financial performance to brand strategy.
Right.
We even touched on those all-important legal challenges.
Oh, you did?
But there's one final piece of the puzzle that we need to explore.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Before we wrap up.
Okay.
And that is Globus Spirits' corporate social responsibility initiatives.
Oh, that's a crucial aspect of any business these days. Consumers are holding companies accountable for their social and environmental impact.
They are. It's not just about profits anymore. It's about purpose.
And it seems like Globus Spirits is aware of this shift in expectations.
It seems like they are.
The source materials highlight their initiatives in giving back to the community.
Right.
Promoting responsible consumption and minimizing their environmental footprint.
Yeah. They've partnered with NGOs to support education and healthcare. They've launched awareness campaigns to promote responsible drinking.
Right.
And they've invested in sustainable practices.
Right.
Like reducing water consumption and exploring renewable energy sources.
So it sounds like they're taking this holistic approach to business.
It does.
Recognizing that these social, environmental, and economic factors are all interconnected.
It's a win-win-win situation.
It is. They're doing good for the planet, for their communities, and potentially even for their bottom line.
Exactly. It's a reminder that businesses can be a force for good in the world.
Right. Not just profit-making machines.
And speaking of forces for good, we are approaching the end of our allotted time for this deep dive.
Right.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder.
Ooh, intrigue us.
All right. So given their ambitious growth plans, their strategic investments, and their commitment to sustainability, the question is, will Globus Spirits emerge as a dominant force in the Indian spirits market?
That's the question.
Or will the increasing competition and the complexities of the Indian business environment prove to be insurmountable obstacles?
I guess that's a question only time will tell.
It is.
But it's a question that's worth pondering.
It is.
As we continue to follow the journey
Yeah.
of this dynamic and ambitious company.
And on that note,
okay,
we'll conclude this part of our deep dive
right
into the fascinating world of Globus Spirits.
All right.
We hope you found it informative,
Yeah,
insightful, and perhaps even a little bit inspiring.
But we're not done yet.
We're not.
We've still got more ground to cover.
Yeah.
More insights to uncover.
More to come.
So be sure to join us for the final part of this deep dive, where we'll wrap everything up.
We'll tie it all together.
And leave you with a final thought-provoking question to consider. Okay, welcome back to the final part.
Final part, yeah.
Of our deep dive into Globus Spirits. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Their financials, brand strategy, sustainability initiatives, even, the broader market trends.
And we've seen their ambition, strategic thinking, willingness to adapt.
Right.
But as we wrap up, I want to circle back to those corporate social responsibility initiatives we touched on earlier.
Yeah, those are becoming increasingly important these days.
They really are.
And I think they deserve a closer look.
I agree.
Yeah, it's not just about what a company produces and sells anymore. Consumers are really looking beyond the products. They want to know what a company stands for, what values they embody, how they're impacting the world around them.
And it's not just consumers either.
Right.
Investors are increasingly factoring in a company's social and environmental track record when making decisions.
Right.
Employees, especially younger generations, want to work for companies that align with their values. It's really a holistic shift in expectations.
It's no longer just about profit. It's about purpose.
Exactly. And Globus Spirits seems to be attuned to this shift.
Yeah, I agree.
Their partnerships with NGOs to support education and healthcare in their local communities really speak volumes about their commitment to social impact.
And their efforts to promote responsible drinking habits through awareness campaigns and educational programs. I mean, that demonstrates a sense of responsibility that goes beyond just simply selling their products.
Exactly. They're recognizing that they have a role to play in shaping a culture of responsible consumption.
And that's commendable.
It is.
Yeah. And let's not forget about their investments in sustainable practices, reducing water consumption, minimizing waste generation, exploring renewable energy sources. I mean, these are all concrete steps they're taking to minimize their environmental footprint.
These initiatives are not just about ticking boxes or appeasing stakeholders. They're about embedding sustainability into their core business practices.
And that's what makes them truly meaningful.
Exactly.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
And these efforts are likely to pay off in the long run.
How so?
Well, companies with strong social and environmental track records often enjoy greater brand loyalty. They attract and retain top talent. And they're better positioned to navigate regulatory changes.
So it's a win for everyone.
It is.
For the company, for society, for the planet.
It's a reminder that business can be a force for good. A catalyst for positive change.
And Globus Spirits seems to be embracing that role.
Yeah, they seem to be.
All right, so it's been an incredible journey.
It has. Exploring this multifaceted world of Globus Spirits. I mean, we delved into their financials, we dissected their brand strategy, uncovered their sustainability initiatives, and even pondered the broader trends shaping the Indian spirits market.
It's a complex market.
It is. It is.
But we've seen a company that's not afraid to take risks, to innovate, to push boundaries. They're ambitious, strategic, adaptable, but they're also grounded in this strong sense of responsibility and a commitment to creating a positive impact.
So what's the final verdict?
The final verdict. I think it's safe to say Globus Spirits is a company worth watching.
Yeah, I agree.
They're playing a significant role in shaping the future of the Indian spirits industry.
It's a fascinating story.
It is. Whether they ultimately achieve their goals remains to be seen. But their story is both fascinating and inspiring. And that's what makes these deep dives so rewarding.
Yeah.
We're not just analyzing numbers and trends.
Right.
We're uncovering stories, exploring possibilities, and gaining a deeper understanding of the forces that shape the world around us.
And we encourage you to continue exploring, delve deeper into the source materials, ask your own questions, draw your own conclusions.
Because ultimately, that's what it's all about. Empowering you, the listener.
That's right.
With knowledge and insight so you can make informed decisions. Navigate the complexities of this ever-changing world.
Exactly. So as we raise a toast to Globus Spirits and their journey ahead.
Cheers to that.
We also raise a toast to you, our listeners.
Yes.
And to your pursuit of knowledge and understanding.
Keep exploring, keep questioning.
Keep learning.
And keep diving deep.
We'll see you next time.